Welcome back. We are reading Brain Saver by Medical Medium. We're officially on part 4 of the book called Brain Invasion. So before we get started, we're going to read a little blurb about what brain invasion is all about. And I am freezing. We are renting right now, and our AC and heat doesn't work. It turns on, but it doesn't blow. So this is going to be difficult. It was hard in the summer. It was really hard in the summer. So I'm sure it'll be really hard in the winter. But then we'll be leaving. Thank God. Oh man. So it starts with sacred headspace. How to use part 4, brain invasion. Anything that affects our mental health can feel like an outside source of some kind is invading our body's sanctuary. Our headspace is sacred, our brain space is sacred, our mind and consciousness are sacred. As we become empowered, our trust becomes restored. We have the ability to heal when we know the truth of what invades our brain. In the chapters that follow, you'll gain insights into several of the most common, perplexing, and complex states of suffering: anxiety, depression, eating disorders, OCD, bipolar, and Alzheimer's and dementia. For detailed explanations of dozens more symptoms and conditions, turn to part 5, Your Pain and Suffering Enlightened. With the information you discover here, you can customize your own healing protocol from part 6, Bringing Back Your Brain, and this book's companion, Brain Saver Protocols, Cleanses, and Recipes. Your symptoms or condition isn't who you are. Now it's time to come back home. Okay, so let me show you these jeans. I just got these jeans. They're a little bit big, but that's okay. From the kids section. What? Y'all, I didn't even think to shop in the kids section. That just never crossed my mind. But then I was in Target and I was like, ugh, nothing ever fits me. I am very, very short and I'm very thin. And that combo is adult clothes don't fit. And what's so funny with these jeans is that they have, do you see, an adjustable waist. So I'm hoping that will work. And they have a snap button. I freaking love them. Honestly, I should have gotten a size smaller though. They're a bit big, but whatever. $18. $18 for a pair of jeans. And then when you buy them in adult, they're $80, 60, maybe 80. I don't know. I like higher quality clothes, so my clothes are usually more expensive. This is LL Bean. It's kind of expensive, but it's so nice, so warm. But Target, now this is I'll start soon, okay? Target, I feel like it doesn't sell small, short people sizes. They have size 0, size 2, but they're only for tall people. They're this much too long, not even exaggerating. So then I have to go to my seamstress, and that's kind of expensive. So, anywho, Cat and Jack jeans, hell yeah. I am totally going to buy more. Why is my mom calling? I did call her, but then she didn't answer, so I was like, you know what? Whatever. I'm gonna read. She can wait. because I think if I pause it, Anywho, I'm just going to read some anxiety and call her back. Shoot, where'd I put my pin? What? Oh. On the floor. Okay. So, what is anxiety? Now, this is probably going to be a double, like 2 parts, because it's kind of long. Okay? And I used to actually struggle with like really, really bad anxiety, so much that I was trying to get my mom to take me out of school when I was in high school to do homeschool, because I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. Like, I don't know. I'm just like fucking panicked all the time and I'm shitting my brains out. Like, I had like the diarrhea anxiety, and that sucked, and it was embarrassing. I was just like anxious about everything and nothing at the same time. I was just like always anxious, like severely anxious. I'm not anymore, thank God. And it was actually, I actually did the anxiety protocol, thank God. Now I don't have anxiety. I don't struggle with it. I'm actually like outgoing now. I like talk to people and I don't have a problem with it and blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's get to it. Starting at 6:40, okay? Not one person on the planet has anxiety that's identical to another's. Everyone's anxiety is different. 2 people's anxiety may share similarities. There could be a similar tightening of the chest, constricting of the throat, funny feeling in the stomach, feeling like they can't sit still, mouth becoming dry, nervousness, sweaty palms, overwhelming sensation, racing heart, racing thoughts, arms going numb, feeling like they can't breathe, or shaky, weak legs. Yet even if 2 people share any of these symptoms, it's not possible to have the same anxiety. For example, I often meet people who get overwhelmed quite easily. While we can all identify with what that word overwhelmed means, we get overwhelmed for different reasons, and even when it's 2 individuals becoming overwhelmed for the same reason, the anxiety is entirely different. You'll find that when they get anxious, people describe their anxiousness differently. We call it anxiety without being sure that's what it is. Some live with nervousness and other symptoms, maybe a phobia or a sensation, like they can't talk when they're around certain people, and never realize it was anxiety the whole time. What is anxiety? Was it anxiety? What does the term really mean? Anxiety is a confusion in the medical industry and always has been. It refers to a set of symptoms or even one symptom where the root cause can't be identified. If someone is experiencing uncomfortable symptoms that are somehow interrupting their normal function on a regular basis and they've gone through medical testing looking for obvious problems and all check out fine, they usually find themselves at the psychiatrist or doctor's office being offered medication and told they have anxiety. That was me. I was on anti-anxiety medication for like 4 years, and it was terrible. It didn't work. I took it. It caused stomach issues though. Thank God I don't take any medication anymore. I just didn't see a point. I was looking for the root cause on how to heal, and I found it in these books, Medical Medium, which is why I'm reading it now. Just in case anybody hasn't heard of Medical Medium and they want to heal. I was like, you know what, let me just do what I can, and I can read it online. Interrupting normal function is a key part of the definition of anxiety. Yes, it's part of the human condition to feel some anxiousness about life. Here in this chapter, we're talking about an anxiety disorder, one that interferes with someone's life. Anxiety can be mild to severe. With mild anxiety, it's beyond anxiousness. You're aware of mild anxiety. It's being brought to your attention enough that it's affecting some of your interactions and decisions, and yet this mild anxiety is not holding you back from most things you want to do in your life. With more severe anxiety, it's impeding life. You could be seized up, sick, or stuck in bed, shaking with anxiety. The label anxiety can be applied when someone has panic attacks or shortness of breath, gets completely overwhelmed with responsibilities, uncertainties, and fears of life, or has the feeling of being seized up where it's hard to talk, their entire body goes numb, and they have the feeling of not being able to get air in their lungs. Anxiety could be experienced as the body drenching in sweat, with arms and hands becoming freezing cold and uncontrollable shivers and shakes that eventually build to uncontrollable convulsions. Or anxiety could feel like you can't sit still, like you want to jump out of your skin, like you need to keep busy to avoid a panic attack, like you can't be alone and always have to be around someone. There are a lot of different anxiety symptoms someone can exhibit. Mild symptoms of anxiety include mild heart racing and funny sensations in the abdomen. Many times people experience other physical symptoms with and around their anxiety, such as vision issues, eye floaters, and dizziness. In this case, they have more than anxiety. They have a virus causing additional symptoms, yet it's all bundled up as one and diagnosed as anxiety. It's very common for an anxiety sufferer to find the symptoms they experience are misinterpreted as part of their anxiety. The true nature of your anxiety and symptoms won't be understood by today's medical research and science, even when anxiety seems clear, like when you start developing symptoms at a difficult, stressful moment in life. Maybe it's a struggle you're going through. Enormous stress, extreme grief over the loss of a loved one, a relationship breakup, divorce, loss of a job, or any kind of trial you can be up against in life. If anxiety symptoms start to show themselves, it seems obvious the trauma must be the cause. Is it? A lot of people go through some really hard times and don't exhibit any symptoms of anxiety. A lot of people go through hard times and do exhibit symptoms of anxiety. What makes them different? I love these questions, these deeper questions. Because when I was diagnosed with anxiety, well, that didn't give me anything. Okay, I have it. Why and how do I fix it, and how do I not have it? Oh, you can't give me the answer of how not to have it. You can only prescribe me pills and medication that I need to take for the rest of my life? No. I said no. You're not my doctor. I'm my own doctor. You can only be your own doctor. If trauma were the true underlying cause of anxiety, no one would ever skate free. Every single difficult thing that happened would produce anxiety on some level, whether panic attacks, flipping sensations in the stomach, crippling stomach aches, phobias, an inability to express oneself, tightness of the chest, the feeling of your body shutting down, and on and on. We would all get that all the time from everything that challenged us. Besides which, many people haven't had serious challenges. Life is smooth without too many speed bumps, yet they can still be crippled by anxiety even when everything in their life is going well. This shows that it's not trauma or stress that's the true cause of anxiety. Those are more like triggers. They can trigger some people while not triggering others. What are they triggering? a vulnerability already inside the body. It's not an illness so much as a true cause, something that's always been sitting there that finally ignites. That something could have been sitting there for 6 months, a year, or an entire lifetime. So what causes anxiety? Let's talk about it. For an anxiety condition to develop, there has to be an underlying physical vulnerability. Someone could go through the worst child abuse, for example, and not develop anxiety if they don't have the underlying factors we'll examine. Without those underlying factors, without those causes, anxiety would not exist. A fear would exist, a nervousness would exist, a distrust would exist, perhaps a tendency to always err on the side of caution. Because we're human and we experience a range of emotions in response to our life experiences. For all of that to develop into a crippling anxiety condition is entirely different. When it's true anxiety, the kind that limits us and keeps us from optimally functioning and making the choices we wish we could make, there's something else happening inside the body affecting the brain. Many people experience anxiety on and off through life, even when everything is fine. They're going along, financially stable, traveling, loving their work. Maybe they don't even have to work. And then they get their first panic attack, and then their second panic attack, and they're off to the doctors, ending up with medication and a diagnosis of anxiety. That's without trauma or stress, so what's the trigger? It's different altogether. Triggers can come in all shapes and sizes. They can be elusive, deceptive, mysterious, undetectable, or they can arrive in the most obvious forms. You'll read more about triggers soon. For someone to develop the mysterious chronic condition that eventually becomes labeled as anxiety, there needs to be at least one core foundational neurotoxic cause present. In the past, I've always said that chronic anxiety is caused by toxic heavy metals and or viruses, with emotional injury sometimes acting as a trigger to these underlying causes. This is still true. It's also time to broaden this definition of cause, as chemical exposure in our world are now evolving to such a degree. Anxiety is caused by neurotoxic exposures, which include toxic heavy metals and viruses, as well as toxic chemicals and other exposures that are injurious to our nerves. So that is it. Chemicals are in high production at this time. They're being placed into fragrances, perfumes, colognes, scented fragrances, scented candles, air fresheners, detergents, fabric softeners, and cleaning products. Neurotoxic chemicals also include pesticides being dropped over communities worldwide for mosquito and other insects. Herbicides being sprayed in yards, properties, buildings, parking lots, communities, towns, villages, agricultural land, highways, and roadsides. And fungicides being sprayed on all new clothing, blankets, sheets, bedding, pillows, couches, furnitures, fixtures, and car interiors. Caffeine, MSG, and radiation can also be harsh on the nerves. Emotional upheaval can cause acute temporary anxiety due to fight or flight adrenaline surges. Yet on its own, emotional upheaval does not cause chronic anxiety. If the anxiety lasts and becomes chronic, it means that at least one of these underlying physical causes is present. Let me show you guys what I got. This is orange, apple, strawberry. And it is as fire as it sounds. Delicious. Okay, let's talk about interconnected cause. Anxiety is often caused by a mix of factors. Someone could have all three factors, all three causes of anxiety at once, or a combination: toxic heavy metals, a viral load, and or other neurotoxic exposures. For example, if someone has mysterious tightness of the chest with their anxiety, this could be caused by viral or toxic heavy metal or chemical irritation, or all three, inflaming a region of the vagus nerves. The causes of anxiety are often interconnected. Many neurotoxic exposures contribute to anxiety in two ways. One, the substance themselves are toxic to the nerves as they touch the nerves and the nerves become allergic. And two, the substances feed and trigger viruses. And many toxic chemicals, such as fragrances and pesticides, are toxic in two ways. One, because the substances contain toxic heavy metals in their chemical formulas, and two, because the chemical formulas themselves are injurious to nerves and feed and trigger viruses. Some of these chemicals, even without containing toxic heavy metals or acting as viral triggers, can be enough to create a neurotoxic reaction and eventually nerve injury that causes anxiety. There are dozens of examples of different variations of each individual cause of anxiety. The combinations are endless. Different amounts of toxic heavy metals, different viruses, different toxic chemicals, different viral load, different locations of these exposures in the brain and body, different triggers, different challenges. In each person, there's a variability in exposures, even on the most minute level, minute level, which makes each person's anxiety unique. All right, so toxic heavy metals interfering with electricity. People with anxiety can have toxic heavy metals residing inside the brain, and these metals weaken neurotransmitters and interfere with electrical impulses driving through the organ, which creates an automatic vulnerability. As I read about in Chapter 3, Your Alloy Brain, these metals enter into the brain before birth, throughout childhood, and even in adulthood. In every single person, there's a different combination of metals in a different area of the brain, different on the most subtle levels. And this accounts for each person's anxiety being different in sometimes the most subtle ways. Some people's anxiety may amp up at night, in the morning, or only every other day. There's so many variables to what triggers it. Take note that the toxic heavy metals that reside inside our brains are not a trigger for anxiety. They're a cause. We can't get confused about this. What the medical industry should be identifying as a true cause of anxiety is the presence of toxic heavy metals sitting inside the brain that oxidize over time. When they oxidize, the toxic heavy metals outgas, leach, and corrode. That corrosion saturates adjacent brain tissue, interfering with electrical pathways. The electricity of the brain, as well as diminishing neurotransmitter chemicals, by draining the electrical grid inside the brain and altering hundreds of chemical functions that reside inside the brain. So let's talk about viruses creating inflammation. The body harboring viruses is another cause of anxiety. These pathogens can live in the liver and other organs, and from there affect the cranial nerves, such as the vagus, trigeminal, and facial nerves, as well as the phrenic nerves and the central nervous system. Viruses can also get into the brain, directly causing brain inflammation, although most people with anxiety don't have viruses inside the brain. Almost all viral-related causes of anxiety are caused by viruses in other parts of the body, such as the liver. In many cases, a virus will also inhibit cranial nerves. For example, shingles and herpes simplex 1 can be harbored in the facial and trigeminal nerves, while EBV can be in the vagus nerve. Toxic heavy metals are the main creators of anxiety, yet viruses and toxic heavy metals often go together because viruses feed off of heavy metals, consume them, absorb them, and release waste matter called neurotoxins, which I read about in Chapter 4, Your Viral Brain, and Chapter 6, Your Inflamed Cranial Nerves. Viruses eat. They eat toxic heavy metals and other toxic chemicals that shouldn't be in the body, and they even feed on the unproductive foods that we eat. Once they're excreted by viral cells, these viral neurotoxins enter the bloodstream, float around, and become allergens to nerves, close to and even inside the brain. Viral neurotoxins have an extreme saturation rate because today's toxic chemicals that a virus is eating and processing are different from the toxic chemicals of yesteryear, absorbing easily into tissues and nerves. Viruses are eating much more toxic substances than they ever did. Even the smallest amount of viral neurotoxins can make a nerve sensitive, which can trigger any form of anxiety. Viral neurotoxins can enter into the brain with ease, causing an allergic response thereto. Mild headaches, dizziness, and brain fog are common allergic responses to neurotoxins in the brain. This is one reason why additional symptoms often accompany anxiety. You don't have to be high in toxic heavy metals or toxic chemicals to get viral neurotoxins. You just need viral fuel. Viruses simply feeding on brain betrayer foods in our diet, such as eggs, can still produce neurotoxins that cause anxiety. While it may not be the most potent form of neurotoxin creating the most debilitating version of anxiety, it's still anxiety. Once again, viruses are not triggers for anxiety, they are causes. Keep this in mind because when publicly known medical research and science find medical medium information about viruses playing a role in certain conditions, they will classify viruses as triggers, not causes. Remember this, viruses are a true cause of anxiety, all on their own. Isn't this interesting, you guys? I'm still trying to kind of figure out the lighting because it's definitely not my preferred, because sometimes when the light hits the book, it's a little bit hard to like see. It's like an intense glare, so that's kind of why I'm everywhere. Chemical brews fueling viruses and irritating nerves. As a result of chemical innovation, anxiety is one of the biggest symptoms people are struggling with right now. Viruses are adapting to new chemical creations, feeding on the chemicals, and creating new varieties of viral neurotoxins that saturate and aggravate nerves. The chemicals in fragrances, such as scented candles, chemical industry domestic invaders, such as cleaning products, and cleaning neuroantagonists, such as pesticides, can also be neurotoxic themselves. These chemicals can affect nerves directly by physically attaching to nerves and becoming nerve irritants. In order for these chemicals to create anxiety on their own like this, there has to be long-term or large amounts of exposure or an already sensitive nervous system from viruses, toxic heavy metals, and/or radiation. These new chemical industry brews are becoming so potent that eventually they'll overthrow standalone toxic heavy metals. Chemical formulas on their own, even without toxic heavy metals in the recipe, are becoming as damaging and problematic for the central nervous system as toxic heavy metals, if not more so. On top of this, many new chemical concoctions contain both these dangerously advanced chemicals and toxic heavy metals. It is so necessary to make your own cleaning supplies. So necessary. And we will be making a video on our page, Tenzyn and Sequoia, Tenzyn and Sequoia. And if it's not going to be on there, it's going to be on our 4 Energy, number 4, INNERGY. Both here on YouTube. Check us out if you're interested. We are highly into sustainability and keeping ourselves safe. Radiation weakening nerves. Let's read about it. Depending on the situation, radiation can be a trigger or a cause of anxiety. Although the effect of radiation from an X-ray or CT scan could be immediate, it could also contribute to anxiety years later. Radiation has a tendency to slow cook nerves over time, even over decades, eventually weakening those nerves so that the person is more susceptible to anxiety. Even if someone's radiation exposure was years ago and has been slowly minimizing in the body as time has passed, that radiation still has the ability to weaken nerves. Someone having many X-rays and CT scans 10 years ago could be the cause of their anxiety today. Plus, other forms of radiation exposure that we encounter on a daily basis can build toxicity. For example, airport scanners and cell phones. While radiation is not a fuel for viruses, radiation lowers the immune system because it gets deep into our bones. If someone is exposed to minimal radiation on and off over the years of their life, that's when it can just be a trigger for anxiety problems by affecting already weakened nerves. When someone gets a larger amount of radiation exposure, whether all at once or accumulated over the years, that's when radiation can actually damage the nerves, taking it from a trigger into a cause of anxiety. Let's talk about anxiety triggers. Let me see. We have this page and then we have that page. I think I'm going to finish it. If I can get comfortable, damn. I wish this was like I wish I had like a book stand. Maybe I'll buy one on Amazon because that would be really nice if I could just like do this because I'm constantly like you know what I mean? Because you can't see it down here because of the light. But if you put it like this and a little bit up, now we're talking. Anxiety triggers. The term trigger is a tricky one. It's being used right now in the alternative and conventional medical industry in a way that makes someone believe they've found the cause of anxiety and yet never identifies the cause. With the main focus staying on triggers, it means no one's going to get down to the root of anxiety. Instead, they're stuck playing the trigger game. They're trying to treat the triggers, thinking they're fixing the causes, thinking they have it under control. The anxiety keeps coming back again because they're not fixing the real problem, the real physical issues. Confrontation with a coworker in the workplace creates stress. It's a trigger for anxiety because it promotes surges of adrenaline to enter the brain and alter brain chemistry, intensifying heat around neurotransmitters and electrical impulses. The cause of someone's anxiety is the presence of toxic heavy metals such as mercury and aluminum in the brain, weakening neurotransmitter activities and hindering neuron strength. The toxic heavy metals in the brain, which is the cause, set the stage so that when adrenaline is released from any kind of stress in the workplace, which is a trigger, the adrenaline intensifies heat, placing stress upon already compromised neurotransmitters, electrical impulses, and neurons inside the brain. Note the cause-trigger difference. Similarly, social anxiety is a common experience. Trying to socialize can be very difficult when struggling to manage anxiety. If you start to feel that your communication is coming across as uneasy to others, it can be a confidence breaker, giving you the feeling that your intentions in the conversation are misunderstood. Plus, social functions often occur in very stimulating environments such as parties. Still, socializing itself is not the cause of the anxiety. It's a trigger. Neurotoxic exposure that have disrupted the brain and nervous system are the cause of the panic attack someone may have upon walking into a party. Exercise can trigger someone with anxiety if their vagus nerves are inflamed from viral neurotoxins fueled by toxic heavy metals. The virus and toxic heavy metals are the cause of the anxiety. A food somebody is eating could trigger off a bout of anxiety, whether in the form of a panic attack, tightness in the chest, strangulation sensation in the throat, dry mouth, or the like as soon as that food enters the stomach or even the mouth. The food is only a trigger because the food is causing peristaltic action, which sets off sensitive, inflamed vagus nerves. Once again, goodness Christ, I cannot get comfortable in this damn seat. Once again, toxic heavy metals, other neurotoxic exposures, and or viruses are the cause. Ugh. Let me figure this out. Let me get up close and personal. Lack of the right food can also be a trigger. Low electrolytes, low trace mineral salts, B12 deficiencies, low glucose uptake because of insulin resistance, adrenaline fatigue from caffeine use, and low critical chemical compounds can all act as anxiety triggers. When what we consume isn't rebuilding and replenishing neurotransmitters and other chemicals inside the brain, anxiety can start to show itself. Deficiencies is only a trigger to a bigger underlying problem. That's the cause. Whether toxic heavy metals, a high load of neurotoxins from a virus, a high level of radiation exposure through the years, or a high load of other toxic chemicals that we can encounter in our daily lives. If the industry does connect the dots and realizes that toxic heavy metals, viruses, and other toxic exposures are involved with anxiety, both alternative and conventional medicine will mistakenly identify them only as triggers. That minimizes what's really happening and can intrude on your ability to heal. Examples of anxiety triggers. Here are a few examples of anxiety triggers. This is not an exhaustive list. Blood being drawn from blood tests, donating blood, intermittent fasting done wrong, new relationships, running on adrenaline all day, not eating consistently, not sleeping enough, having a newborn baby, cosmetic procedures, surgeries, emotional up and downs, and food poisoning. So let's talk about the fine line between trigger and cause. In some cases, an exposure can act as either a trigger or a cause of anxiety, or both, depending on the circumstance. As you read earlier in this chapter, that's because some exposures are neurotoxic themselves, and at the same time, they can lower someone's immune system and or directly fuel viruses. Here are a few examples. Perfume, cologne, air fresheners, and scented candles, dental work, medical treatments, pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides, consuming caffeine, and consuming MSG. Let's talk about anxiety triggering anxiety. I used to feel this way. I thought it was crazy, and others did too. I was like, I get anxiety thinking about my anxiety. I get anxiety about why I don't have anxiety. I get anxiety about when will my anxiety come. Like, it was haunting me in high school. Thank God I found these books. Anxiety has the ability to compound on itself. Anxiety can trigger anxiety. This is because during a bout of anxiety, the adrenals get triggered into fight or flight. Someone can become nervous or anxiety-ridden over having anxiety, prompting a vicious cycle that creates more intense anxiety. When this happens, anxiety can take on a life of its own. This is a type of PTSD that can develop around having anxiety. If you have difficulty breathing during an anxiety attack, then breathing in general can become fear-inducing, which means you have a certain level of PTSD. Many people fear passing out during a panic attack. They fear they're going to die because the panic is so intense and difficult, or because it feels like the panic takes control over their body as they're hyperventilating to the point where they get dizzy, can't breathe, and feel like they're dying. If this happens to you, remind yourself that if you ever do pass out from a panic attack, you're not going to die. You're going to wake up shortly after passing out, start to stabilize and catch your breath. Your breathing will even out, and you'll be okay. If anxiety is chronic, meaning the bouts of fight or flight adrenaline happen persistently, it can eventually create some mild adrenal fatigue. Adrenal fatigue is not uncommon with someone who's battling long-term chronic anxiety. When triggers change, let's talk about it. Triggers of anxiety can also change, which is another indication that they're merely triggers, not cause. that triggers change and shift is a confusing aspect when someone is trying to make sense of their anxiety. A food, for example, that seems to be triggering panic attacks at one point may not do it again. Yet that person could continue to experience anxiety on and off. The food trigger goes away, yet the anxiety stays. It means the food trigger didn't create the anxiety. Triggers can shapeshift. A trigger can disappear and appear as something else. It can change direction. It once was this food, and now it's something completely different. When triggers such as foods, people, events, circumstances, and fears change, it shows that they weren't the original source of their anxiety. Some people start having panic attacks the moment they enter a car and they can't drive anymore. Professionals may claim that an association with the car is the problem and they should stay out of the car. Then sometimes a car ride won't do it anymore. Here's what's really going on beneath the surface with driving anxiety. Many car rides, panic attacks, come from the cranial nerves getting overstimulated when driving. For example, optic or facial nerves endure a level of stress as you're looking through a windshield or a window from within a moving car. Actually, I'm going to underline that because that makes sense, but I haven't really thought about that. All cranial nerves receive information about your surroundings as you're driving or riding as a passenger in a vehicle. Someone crossing the street, catching a stop sign in time, going through a yellow light, someone behind you flashing their headlights, someone cutting you off, somebody waving their hand and letting you go, merging, driving at high speeds, and then the processing of where you're going and the time needed to get there all weigh in as factors. This is all part of the overstimulation process of the cranial nerves. When these cranial nerves are inflamed, it becomes overload. Alarm bells ring as neurons are beginning to generate more heat than normal. The cranial nerves were already inflamed beforehand, and then the stimulation of driving became the anxiety trigger. One car ride could be less stimulating than another on any given day, or the nerves could be less inflamed, in either case, leading to less anxiety. Wow, I used to have crazy car anxiety, driving anxiety. I was a mess. I was a full mess. I was so scared to get to another lane. I was oh my God. I was probably so scared that it was crazy. But now I don't have anxiety. I don't have anxiety. I don't have car anxiety. I just don't have it anymore. Anxiety and OCD. Anxiety is not OCD, and OCD is not anxiety. They are two very different things. A person can have OCD and not have anxiety, and a person can have anxiety and not have OCD. Or a person can have both OCD and anxiety. It's important to understand them each in their own right, which we'll read more about OCD in chapter 34. The ebb and flow of anxiety, and this is the last little sub-chapter in this chapter. Our brain and body fight for us and have the ability to overcome obstacles. Our brain and body find ways to compensate, to hold some forms of systematic balance, keeping us as operational as possible under the circumstances we've given. New cells are produced, old cells die, and someone's bouts of anxiety may come and go, no longer triggered by the same factors, because our cells that held the underlying toxins have changed. That said, having new cells doesn't automatically erase old symptoms. When old cells die and new cells are produced, the new cells still carry a level of toxins left from the old dying cells in the brain and nervous system if we're not actively working on extracting the toxins. Part of the reason why anxiety can ebb and flow is due to the brain and nerve cell renewal, along with our brain and body's adaptive ability. It may be that someone's anxiety is only with them for a short time in college, and then they don't see anxiety for another couple of years until a stressful time occurs, like a breakup in a relationship or a pregnancy, where they're using all their reserves to create a baby. So those reserves aren't there anymore to keep their brain at the strength needed to overcome the toxic heavy metals or viral neurotoxins in the brain. All along, they still had a level of toxic heavy metals or viral neurotoxins, and they were able to cope. Then came a trigger that affected their resources and strength. Our brain and body's ability to adapt is especially present when we're younger. As we age and we're not filling our brain up with the critical compounds it needs, we worsen. With new awareness, we can change that. We can overcome anxiety. When somebody removes toxic heavy metals from the brain and restores the brain and nerve tissue, which can be done, anxiety will diminish. The many different varieties of symptoms can disappear, or some anxiety symptoms may persist at reduced levels because a person is still viral. In that case, they can work on getting rid of viruses that are living inside their body and nervous system. To heal from anxiety, we want to free ourselves of any neurotoxic factor, whether toxic heavy metals, viral activity, or other toxic exposures such as fragrances and chemical neuroantagonists. Finding relief from anxiety takes this understanding of the big picture. For example, for specific anxiety support beyond what's offered in Bringing Back Your Brain in this book, refer to the anxiety protocol, cranial nerve inflammation protocol, and or PTSD protocol in this book's companion, Brain Saver Protocols, Cleanses, and Recipes. For specific support for anxiousness, milder and less disruptive than anxiety, refer to anxiousness protocol. Well, that is the end of this chapter, the end of reading about anxiety. It does end with a quote. Everyone is under so much pressure from so many directions. Our emotions are getting invaded and manipulated like never before from factors that are clouding and disrupting and unsteadying and toying with what our emotions are meant to communicate. That's Anthony Williams, medical medium. If you liked this video, go ahead and like it. If you liked this video, and if you're interested in learning more about what this book has to offer, go ahead and like my video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and click the notification bell so you can be notified when I post. And next, we'll be reading chapter 32, all about depression. So if you're having depression, if you're struggling with depression, you're going to want to click that bell so we can really deep talk. Okay, happy healing. Peace out, guys.